Did you catch part one? I hope you did. If you didn't, I will make sure to put a link so that you can see part one as well. So today we're jumping into part two. Part two is business strategy. It is the four AI competencies that separate pilots from profitable operations. So if part one was all about building your strategic foundation, part two really is about not wasting money. You've got the eight competencies. Now we're getting really specific about the four that determine whether your AI investments actually move the needle or on revenue retention and competitive advantage. And again, if you missed part one, I will make sure to put that in the comments and link that through. I really want you to catch that as well, because they are full of lots of great information. It gives you more than just a starting point. It actually gives you framework, real framework that you can actually use. So beyond the eight competencies that we talked about, the four that we're covering, these are business strategy terms that separate leaders who actually create measurable ROI from organizations that end up with expensive experiments and regret. So we're going to talk about the mistakes that actually cost companies millions of dollars. They didn't realize it until it was actually too late. So this skill is AI viability versus AI adoption and strategy. We've talked about this quite a bit in recent weeks, and they are two completely different questions and two completely different answers. So the AI viability, it asks, can this work? Does the technology actually solve the problem? And AI adoption is about strategy. It's asking, should this work here for us right now? And at what scale? Well, most companies confuse these. They prove something is technically viable and then assume that they should also adopt it, right? Enterprise wide. And that's how you really end up with the AI solution looking for problems. So the reason why this matters is because viability protects you from chasing impossibilities. Adoption strategy protects you from chasing possibilities that don't make sense for your business. And you hear me say this all the time. Does it actually make sense for your business? Is this something that is going to propel you forward? Can you measure the metrics on it? And so a language model might technically be viable, right, for summarizing patient notes in healthcare, but adoption strategy asks how much does this actually save the provider time? So it's nice to have, but do we actually have to have it? And is there a true benefit to it? Does it reduce errors or introduce new ones? What's the ROI at scale? Do we have the data infrastructure? How does this change our liability? Can we govern it? So one answers the technology question, the other answers the business question to it. And for leaders and founders, you need both conversations. But most companies only have the technical viability conversation. They never get to the adoption strategy. That's why you end up with 47 different AI pilots and zero scaled solutions. So here's a red flag, folks. The most expensive mistake is proving AI can work and then rolling it out before you've answered the adoption question. You implement AI solutions, it looks good in pilot, you scale it 3 months in, and then you realize the ROI doesn't match the cost. You don't have governance framework for this scale work. Your team doesn't have time to maintain it. Customer adoption is lower than projected. You can't prove it's actually improving outcomes. So you've now spent about 18 months and a significant budget on something you didn't actually need to adopt just yet or even at all. So the cost here is that there's a McKinsey research that shows 74% of companies struggle to scale AI, not because the technology doesn't work, but because they skipped the adoption strategy and went straight from this technically viable, right, to let's do this company wide. So here's a great example. Healthcare organizations, they can prove that an AI diagnostic tool is 94% accurate. Viability looks great. They don't ask the adoption question. Can our doctors actually use this in a clinical workflow? Do they trust it? What happens when it makes a mistake? Are we liable? They roll it out. Clinicians don't use it. It becomes expensive software that no one trusts. And then 18 months later, it's been abandoned. So the company had viable technology that they never actually implemented an adoption strategy for. So for your business, before you implement anything at scale, I want you to ask these questions. Viability test is great to measure where you are in this process. Can this technology do what we claim it will do? And then you run a small pilot, get real data. And it even works better if you use it in one of your more complicated areas of business so that you can track specifically what is happening in real time. The second thing I want you to do before implementing anything at scale is ask about the adoption strategy test. Should we, and at what scale? With what timeline? What does success actually look like? And can we measure it? Right? So, do we have the infrastructure, the team, the governance? If you can't answer the adoption question, don't scale the viable solution yet, because you need to go back and you need to fix that first. Here's the next skill. Shadow AI governance framework. Oh, what is that? Sounds like a tongue twister, right? Shadow AI is what happens when employees use AI tools without permission, without governance, without documentation. It's the 90% of your workforce who's using ChatGPT, while IT and leadership have no idea. So it's not rogue behavior, it's survival behavior. Your team is solving problems faster because they're using AI, but you don't know about it. You can't even govern it and you can't learn from it. So this governance framework is the answer for you. Clear policies, approved workflows, data handling standards. You want audit trails and escalation procedures that let your team use AI productively while you maintain control. And also, the most important is security. And the reason why this matters for business outcomes is because shadow AI costs you three things. First, it's a security risk. Your team is sharing sensitive data, customer information, financial records, proprietary code with AI systems that aren't in your security perimeter. One data breach, and you're all exposed. Now, the second one is knowledge loss. Your team is solving problems with AI that you'll never learn about. They leave their AI augmented processes, leave them behind, and then you have to rebuild from scratch. So let's say if they leave the team, they leave the department, they leave the company, and now you're not sure exactly how they use this process to help make what they were doing easier or more efficient. And then there's the third one, there's the competitive advantage. The organizations with governance frameworks are learning from shadow AI. They are normalizing it. They're scaling what works and they're staying ahead. So for leaders and founders, shadow AI isn't the enemy, it's the signal. Your team is voting with their time. They're saying this tool helps me to work faster, right? The question is, will you learn from that, govern it, and scale it, or will you pretend it's just not happening? I know this person is using it in XY department. They're not supposed to. I've already said something before. I'm not going to say anything else. Is that going to be your approach? Or is it going to be, hey, come into my office. Let's talk about what you're using, why you're using it. And let's also align it with our internal policies and our governance program that we have already implemented. That's what that conversation should sound like. And so here's the red flag and how it costs you. The most expensive mistake is ignoring shadow AI until you have a security incident. And here's the scenario. If your data team is using ChatGPT to analyze customer data, they're faster, they're iterating, right? They're solving problems in days instead of weeks. No one knows this is happening. One team member copies a customer database into ChatGPT to ask a question. They're thinking they're being really thorough. They're copying the entire profile of the customer and also proprietary information into ChatGPT, thinking, I want to optimize the outcome of my answer, right? 6 weeks later, the data shows up in ChatGPT's training data. A competitor sees it. They know your pricing strategy. They know your customer acquisition costs. They know everything. So you have a data breach, you have liability, you have media coverage, you have 18-month compliance investigation. The cost is millions, possibly even the reputation. So the broader cost, Zendex shows in a 2025 data report that shadow AI usage in some industries has increased by 250% year over year. So most organizations have no governance framework. They're betting that no one will get hurt. That's not a strategy. Hoping and wishing, and I think we're going to be okay. That's not a strategy, right? So here's a real example. A legal firm with about 200 attorneys, paralegals are using ChatGPT to summarize depositions. It saves hours. Paralegals don't tell anyone because no one has asked, right? One attorney uses it to draft a motion without reviewing the output carefully. Sounds familiar? The AI hallucination, it states a case citation, right? The motion is filed. The other side catches it, though, and the firm loses credibility. The case outcome is affected. The cost, its time, its credibility, potentially even the case. And it's all because shadow AI had no governance. So you don't shut down shadow AI, you light it up like a Christmas tree. You want everyone to know about it. You want it to be seen. You want it to be extremely visible. And you acknowledge it. Your team is using AI, accept it. However, there are parameters, right? So you want to ask what they're using it for, talk to your team, understand which problem they're solving with AI, and listen. Because you want to build governance and not restrictions. Create a framework that says, here's how you can use AI. Here's what you need to check. Here's what requires approval from us. Here's how we audit it. And make it easy to do the right thing. Make it easy for someone to come to you if they realize, okay, you know what, I really made a mistake and I want to make sure that I bring it to leadership's attention. Because the faster that you can get that mistake into your hands, the faster that you can start rectifying the situation. So you want to learn and scale what's working on shadow AI, bring it into the light, build it into your workflow, and teach it to the whole team, not just a select few. And then you want to close the gap where it's risky. So customer data, proprietary information, legal stuff, those need governance. Everything else, you can let your team experiment and make sure it's within reason and there are parameters that they are aware of, and you're making sure that they know and it's easy to find and easy to report issues. You know, the organizations that are winning right now, they aren't the ones that shut down AI use. They're the ones lighting up shadow AI and scaling it strategically. So the next skill I want to focus on is agentic workflows and autonomous operation. So an AI agent is very different from a tool that you use. An AI agent is actually a system that operates semi-autonomously. It is given an objection, right? An objective. It's also given constraints and tools, and then it plans multiple steps based on that. So it executes, it adapts, and then it reports back to you. Agentic workflows are how you redesign your entire business process around AI agents that can do reliably with minimal human intervention. So instead of the human writes a request and then AI generates a response, the human reviews and edits, and then task complete. What you're getting AI agents that have an objective, right? The AI agent, it can break it up into steps, and then the AI agent can implement those steps and then make the decisions based on the guardrails that you have already set. So that is a yes. If this is the answer, this is what you do. You're putting in conditional guardrails, right? And you're making sure that AI agents report results to the human, and the human validates it. So yes, highly needed, very important human in the loop. There's a lot of checks, a lot of balances to make sure that we are falling within the guardrails and within those constraints that you have created. And this is where productivity really, really jumps. And the business outcome is that the agentic workflows are how you move from AI saves time on individual tasks to AI fundamentally changes how we actually do work. So non-agentic means your customer service team uses AI to draft responses. They still review each and every one. So you save 30% of their time, right? But the agentic AI, it handles routine inquiries, things that already come in. They're consistent. You're familiar with them from end to end. Agentic AI will manage this from the entire life cycle. And then it escalates complex ones because you've already built in these guardrails and it learns from feedback. So your team's time now is freed for problem solving. And you get to save about 60% of their time. Quality goes up because the agent is consistent and there also is human oversight. Now, what a non-agentic process looks like is that your operation team uses AI to analyze supplier data. They still run the analysis manually, and you save analytical time, right? The agentic AI, it continuously monitors supplier information. It identifies issues and it recommends actions. It will flag anomalies, and your team gets to the alert when something happens that shouldn't happen, right? Something happens wrong that really matters, and it's in that checklist, it's within those guardrails. So they make strategic decisions. The agent handles the routine monitoring. And this is really where you move from productivity gains to the competitive advantage. So for leaders and founders, this is where the solo operator and small team competes with really big companies. You can't hire 20 people, but you can build an agentic workflow that lets one person do what used to take up to 3 or 4 people, right? So let's focus on this red flag here. What is it going to cost you? That should always be your question. The most expensive mistake is deploying agentic workflows without guardrails. That is the highlight of this conversation today in this training and masterclass. You're hearing me say guardrails because it has to have constraints. An AI agent is operating without direct human oversight, and that's powerful and dangerous. So if you don't set constraints, the agent will optimize for its objective in ways that you didn't anticipate. So a scenario could be that you deploy an AI agent to manage supplier relationships and procurement. The objective is to minimize costs. Guardrails would be the price, the quality, the delivery time, right? But you didn't include a guardrail about supplier diversity. The agent identifies the cheapest supplier and moves all volume there. You lose the supplier diversity, right? You lose the resilience. And then one supplier has an issue, your entire supply chain is affected. Or the agent is managing customer outreach. The objective increases customer lifetime value. The guardrail, none specified. So the agent starts offering discounts aggressively. It increases LTV short term, but it trains customers to expect discounts. They're looking for them, but should they? And then the margins, they compress. The long-term profitability, it drops. The cost is months to fix damage to a business model. And then losses of the team trust in AI. Can we trust AI to do this? So now they want to do everything manually. They've added time back into the schedule, and it kind of defeats the entire purpose, right? So here's an example, a financial services firm, they deploy an AI agent to manage a portfolio on rebalancing. The agent is given target allocations and risk constraints. And what it's not given is the regulatory constraints. The agent makes technically legal moves that trigger compliance red flags. The firm gets audited, it ends up with compliance issues and fines. So the cost here is regulatory headaches, fines, which is expensive, and a reminder that the guardrails aren't optional. They are absolutely necessary. So, for your business, I want you to think about this. Before you deploy an agentic workflow, you need clear objectives. What is the agent actually supposed to accomplish? What do you want the AI agent to accomplish? The other question is hard constraints. What's off limits? What requires human approval and where is the line? You have to be super, super specific and honest on this. Escalation rules. When does the agent stop and ask a human? And you want to make sure that there's not an override built within that process that does not meet your approval. And then monitoring and feedback. How do we know if it's working? How does the agent learn from its mistakes? That's like when you're sitting down with someone and you're getting ready to do a review of their work. How are they learning from their mistakes? Who is teaching them? How are they improving? In what ways? It's a very, very similar concept, right? And then the off switch. Can you shut this down immediately if something goes wrong? The other one is the audit trail. Can you explain every decision that the agent made? So the agentic workflows are powerful, but power without guardrails, it's very, very risky for your business. So the next skill is AI operating model and organizational design. So let me explain what this is. This is how you structure your entire organization around AI. It's not we have a chief AI officer and an AI team. It's more like it's already integrated within your business. So it's like, how do decisions get made? Who owns the AI strategy? Who owns the implementation for AI? And how do different teams collaborate? What's centralized? What's distributed? How do you fund it? How do you staff it? How do you measure success? These are a lot of questions, but they're critical questions. They're important questions for this particular process as well. So your AI operating model is the organizational architecture that makes AI work at scale. Now, it answers like, where do you put accountability, right? Because that's important. Whose feet does this fall on for accountability? And how do you prevent silos? How do you share learning? How do you fund the AI projects? How do you prioritize? How do you do staffing? And the reason why all of these questions are so critical is because you have to get this right. And AI becomes embedded into how you operate. So if you already start off with an operating policy or operational system with AI that's flawed and it's already so embedded and baked into your business and your organization, this is how we get it wrong, right? So you have to have AI projects that talk to each other and don't duplicate efforts. And also, they have to fit to scale. And the reason why this is such an important business outcome is because an operating model determines whether AI is the thing your company does or a thing that happens to your company. So a bad operating model, you have an AI team in IT, marketing has an AI project, finance has an AI project. They're not talking to each other. They're just using different platforms, different data, different standards, different governance. Each team is optimizing for their own success. The company is sub-optimizing overall because they don't talk to each other. So the result is fragmented AI implementation, high cost because you have two teams or two departments that are possibly purchasing the same type of platform but using it in different ways. And so you want to focus on eliminating duplicated efforts, right? No economies of scale is what you're risking. And then you're also risking not having a learning transfer. And this is really important. It really, really important. So, you know how you sit down sometimes and we have the exit interviews, right? This is a lot like that because it is a transfer of knowledge. It is a transfer of experience from one person, team, department to another. And this is what you're extracting. A really good operating model is that you would have AI strategy that sets a direction and a governance, right? Each function, whether it's marketing, it's finance, it's operations, it has AI implementation that leads and reports both of their functions and to the AI strategy office. So they share learnings, they use common standards, and they're also very collaborative. So you're looking at a coordinated AI implementation economies of scale. You're looking at shared learning, lower cost per initiative, and much, much faster scaling. So for leaders and founders, as you grow, this becomes super, super critical. A solo founder can fly by the seat of their pants. A 20-person company, they need basic structure. A 100-person company, they need real operating models, right? So if you don't design it, it happens by accident, and accidents are very expensive. The most expensive mistake is not having an operating model and realizing that after you've already spent millions, and if you're a smaller company, even hundreds can really seriously impact your business. So if you've implemented AI in 5 different departments, each one is running independently. Marketing is using AI for content creation and customer segmentation, right? The budget maybe is 500K. ROI is tracking a lost, right? And then you have sales using AI for lead scoring and opportunity sizing. And then the budget is 300K, ROI tracking, non-existent. Operations, you're using AI for process optimization and forecasting budget, 800K, ROI tracking, detailed. So customer service, if they're using AI for routing and response generation, budget could be 200K, ROI tracking none. Finance does something similar. So you're spending roughly about 1.8 million and you don't even actually know if any of this is working. And you can't compare it because you're not sharing information. You're in silos, right? They're not being the different departments are not being collaborative. And there also is not an AI governance that allows for them to do that, where finance does share with marketing and marketing is sharing with operations and sales and with admins. So everyone is speaking and learning from each other, right? And then you start building this beautiful knowledge tree. These things are not happening if you're not collaborating with each department. So you need an operating model that works for everyone, that is consistent and iterative. You need it before you start spending that 1.8 million and not after. It's not after you've already wasted the money or after you've already spent a couple of hundred. If you're a smaller business, you already know that this is really critical, right? Every dollar counts. And so if you're in this type of scenario where you're a large enterprise with 50,000 employees, no AI operating model, and you have about 200 plus AI projects are running simultaneously. Some are scaling, some are failing. Nobody knows the total investment. Everybody's on the hush hush. We're hoping that our team kind of it takes the lead in the AI initiatives, and we're being seen and honored for it and respected for it. But the problem is that that actually hurts the business, whether you're a small business or a large business, right? So no one can track the ROI company wide. And if you have a chief AI officer who's spending 80% of their time negotiating between functions instead of driving strategy, you know what that looks like. One meeting, after another site visit, after another meeting, where are they in this process? So the cost is misallocated capitals, right? Misallocated capital. It is a duplication of efforts. It is missed opportunities. It is political friction. And the company is doing AI, but not organized. I would not consider that to be a success. So 3 years in, they finally built an operating model. They consolidate from 200 plus projects to 30 high impact ones. And then they realize they've been wasting about 40% of their AI budget. So the cost, millions lost in capital, years of slower progress than competitors who had an operating model from day one. I think that's probably the biggest misconception, was that AI adoption and AI viability did not include an operating model. They absolutely need one, whether you're starting small or large, whether you're scaling 200 AI different platforms, or if you're looking at a really strong contender of 5 or 10 on a daily basis. You need to have this operating model that is consistent across all departments. You could be one person and still have 10 departments. You can be a larger company and have fewer departments. The biggest thing is that there needs to be a collaborative effort, right? So your operating model should answer these questions. They should focus on governance and decision making. Like, who decides what AI projects get funded? What's the approval process? The other question is an organizational structure. Is there a chief AI officer, an AI team who owns and implements in each function? Another question is funding model. Is AI funded centrally by department? Is it hybrid? You've heard that where one department got funding, another department didn't, and one department is looking at the other like, where's our AI? So you need to be able to answer and ask these questions. Some other good questions are standards and platforms. They're not just good questions, they are must-have questions, because this is a breakdown on how your operational model is working and if it's effective. So you want to know like what is required, data standards, AI platforms, governance, ethic views. They're not just nice to haves, they are absolutely necessary. You also want to have a really good understanding of your staffing model. Are the AI practitioners centralized, or are they embedded within the functions? You have some platforms where AI is already built in from beginning to end. So you need to understand what that looks like so that you can implement an AI governance and a model that works. And then there's measurement and reporting, like how do you track ROI? How often and who reports to whom? These are important questions. Learning and knowledge transfer, like how do lessons from one project help others? We see this all the time in business, probably happens to us every single day. You know that one person has the answer because you heard them, right? And they choose not to share it. And so the other person now needs to struggle and try to figure out what that answer is. And the two may not actually match up. They also may not be effective. They may not be realistic long term or even short term. So this knowledge, the sharing of knowledge is really, really critical. And then the escalation and conflict resolution, like when different functions disagree, how do you resolve it? It's just like conflict resolution. You have to think about that. An escalation at the highest level. Who's looking at this? What is happening? How quickly are we turning this around? What's our documentation process look like? So you don't need to be perfect. You need it to be intentional, though. And too many organizations run 5 million AI programs with a 50K governance structure, and that's backwards, right? So here's what you're actually looking at. Part one was the foundation, the thinking frameworks that you already have. And part two is, where is the money? That is where you stop running experiments. Hey, let's try this AI. Let's not. This is where you start building a business around AI. And the AI viability versus adoption a strategy, that separates the pilots that matter from the ones that you should just stop doing. Now, with the shadow AI governance, this is the system that separates the organization from losing data from the ones that are learning from employees' behavior. This is more of a system model. And agentic workflows, which is separate from the company's gaining, right, and productivity, you're actually looking at this in a more specific and very detailed way since it's learning from behaviors. So AI operating model, it separates organizations with fragmented AI projects from the ones scaling it systematically. So this isn't like fluffy concepts. These are the frameworks that determine whether AI makes you faster or just makes you busier. The companies winning right now, they aren't winning because they have better AI. They are winning because they understand these frameworks and they are applying them with discipline. You have the foundation, you have the tools. What separates you from your competition is whether you're strategic about how you use them. And that's the real difference between pilots and profit. So if you're ready to apply this framework to your specific solution, let's talk about where you are and where you want to go. You can send me a direct message or you can visit me at apelli.com with the subject AI business strategy. And I want you to tell me, like, what's your biggest challenge right now? Is it scaling pilots? Is it governance ROI with AI? And also, are you running multiple AI projects or are you still in the early stages of AI, right? And what would winning look like for you the next 90 days? Because this will really help me to better understand where you are within your AI business strategy. I work with leaders, I work with founders and operators who want to move from experimenting to building. So let's schedule a conversation and see where you are on that. The most important thing is that I want you to also remember that you are applying an iterative process within this strategy. And that if you have made some fumbles and you've made some mistakes, we can still look and audit your AI process to see exactly where you are today. So if you gain any value from what we went over within our training, whether it's part two or part one, we also have part three coming. I'm excited about that as well. I want you to go ahead and drop that in the comments for me and let me know where you are within your AI strategy process. But until next time, this is Simone with Apelli signing off and take care, folks.